At my sister's rehearsal, she mocked my job and said my husband only married me for reliable rent. So I canceled every payment I'd made. Their house was foreclosed, her wedding collapsed, and they finally begged the useless sister for help. Hey, Reddit! My family treated me like a walking bank while my sister got crowned the golden child. One day I finally snapped, cut them off, and built a life without them. But of course, they didn't disappear that easily. So, let's rewind to where it all started. I'm Carolyn J. Scott, 31. I work in cybersecurity. People hear that and think I sit in a dark room fighting off hackers. The truth is less exciting. I secure networks, deal with phishing attempts, and fix messes for companies that don't know how to protect their data. It pays well. I like it. And the company's flexible about remote work, though I still go into the office a few days a week. I'm married to Dylan. He's the best person I know. Smart, calm, and the only reason I haven't completely lost it. We don't have kids yet, mostly because we're trying to get our own lives stable before we bring anyone else into it. My family is a different story. Mom, Melissa, is dramatic and obsessed with how people see her. Dad, Frank, avoids anything that requires responsibility. And then there's my younger sister, Sam, the golden one. Debate trophies, law school, future power attorney. She's the one they brag about. I'm the one they call when the lights go out. It started when I was 20. Dad lost his job and I just started mine. They needed help with the mortgage just until things settled. Then it was just the utilities, then just the car payment. 11 years later, I'd paid for pretty much everything. Mortgage top-ups, insurance, surprise bills, Sam's car repairs, her laptop, even a summer course she couldn't miss. I've spent over $320,000 keeping them afloat. They've paid back zero. They don't even see it as help anymore. Mom says I'm so reliable. Dad calls me steady. Sam jokes I'm tech support with a wallet. And they laugh. Always that stupid laugh. Meanwhile, Sam's achievements are treated like national holidays. She gets accepted into law school. Barbecue with 50 people. I get a promotion. Mom says, "Good for you." And then asks if I can cover the property tax bill. That's how it's always been. Tuesday afternoon, Mom calls. "Sweetheart, could you pay the electric bill? Your dad's check didn't clear." Thursday night, Dad rings. "Car is making a weird noise. Can you book a repair?" Sam messages me during finals. "Laptop's dead. I need a new one as soon as possible, and I do it every time without thinking." Dylan's watched it all. He's not mean about it, but he calls it like it is. "They don't respect your boundaries because you don't have any," he said once. He's right. I hate that he's right. The reality check hit during a regular checkup. I'd been tired all the time and having headaches. The doctor took my blood pressure, frowned, and said, "You're way too young for numbers like this." He talked about stress, diet, and sleep, but the part that stuck was, "If you don't make changes, this won't end well." On the way home, Dylan asked what changes he meant. I didn't answer. We both knew. That same night, Mom called, crying about overdue property taxes. "It's only $400, she said, like she was asking me to pick up milk. I paid it without hesitation. And then I sat there staring at the payment confirmation, wondering why I didn't even question it. Dylan looked at me and asked what would happen if you said no. I didn't know. I'd never tried. We talked about it a lot after that, about how much I was carrying, about how it wasn't sustainable. I promised him that once Sam's wedding was over, I'd figure something out. I'd draw a line. I'd stop being the family ATM. I meant it when I said it. But deep down, I still had that stupid hope that maybe if I just kept helping, they'd eventually notice. That one day Mom would say, "We couldn't have done this without you." That Sam would admit, "I wouldn't be where I am without your help." But people don't thank the safety net. They don't notice the floor they're walking on. They just assume it'll always be there. And the more you give, the more invisible you become. I was about to find that out in the most humiliating way possible at Sam's wedding rehearsal. That night would change everything. After that, I wouldn't be the backup plan anymore. I'd stop being the safety net, and for the first time in my life, they'd find out what it feels like to fall. The night of the rehearsal dinner felt wrong before it even started. The restaurant Sam and Dererick picked was one of those mid-level fancy places with overpriced pasta and tiny portions, the kind where everyone speaks too loud to prove they're having fun. There were about 60 people there, her friends from law school, his startup buddies, extended family I barely recognized. Everyone looked excited. Everyone except me. Dylan and I got there early, but our names weren't on the seating chart near the front. Instead, a server led us all the way to the back, next to a swinging kitchen door and a stack of spare chairs. My seat actually wobbled. I paid the venue deposit, the catering down payment, and even covered part of the photographer's retainer, but apparently a spot by the dishwasher was what I qualified for. People started doing speeches before dinner. Most of them were the typical, "you're perfect together" kind of thing. What annoyed me wasn't what they said, it was what they didn't. Every single person who got up there thanked Sam and Derek for building their future from the ground up. They talked about how independent and hardworking they were. One of Derek's friends said he admired how they did everything themselves. I kept my head down. Dylan reached under the table and squeezed my hand when Mom took the mic and said, "I don't know how they pulled off this wedding. Couldn't have done any of this without Carolyn paying attention to details." And the way she said it made it sound like I was a printer that worked quietly in the corner, not the woman who funded half the night. The food came out. Sam and Derek walked around greeting tables. When they got to us, Derek gave me one of those fake, bro-y handshakes and said, "Thanks for making tonight possible." Then he immediately started talking to the couple sitting next to us about his new car. Sam didn't even say hello. After dinner, people were already tipsy and louder. That's when Sam decided to make her big speech. She clinked a fork against her glass, and everyone quieted down. She started with the usual stuff, thanking friends, family, and Derek for believing in her. Then her tone shifted. She looked directly at me. "Carolyn," she said, smiling in that condescending way she does, "I hope you're taking notes tonight. If you had half my drive, you wouldn't need to get married, just to split rent. No shade to Dylan. I'm honestly just happy someone loves you for your reliable direct deposit." The room exploded. People actually howled, laughing. Frank was wiping tears from his eyes. Derek doubled over. A few of Sam's friends clinked their glasses together like she delivered a punchline worthy of a stand-up special. Dylan's face went completely blank. He didn't blink. I felt his hand tighten around mine. My face burned, but I didn't say anything. I just stared at my half-empty plate and said, "Solid," under my breath. Nobody heard me over the laughter. They moved on quickly. More speeches, more jokes. Someone said I should give a toast since I'm footing the bill. I didn't. I sat through the rest of the night quietly, like a prop. When it was over, Dylan didn't speak until we were in the car. The second the doors closed, he turned to me. "This isn't normal," he said. "This isn't a family. It's a circus. You're done, Carolyn. You need to be done." I didn't argue. For the first time, I had nothing to defend. That joke wasn't just a joke. It was the truth they'd been circling for years. They don't see me as part of the family. I'm a service, a convenience, a punchline with a credit score. That night, we booked a 3-week trip, Italy and Greece. I told Dylan it was for my health, but really it was for my sanity. Before we left, I sat down at my desk and opened the spreadsheet I'd been updating for years, the one with every payment I'd ever made for them. Then I got to work. I logged into the mortgage portal and canceled the automatic payment. I called the insurance company and removed Mom's car from my policy. I shut down every utility account in my name and told them to contact the property owner. I went through my banking apps and killed every recurring transfer, mortgage top-ups, bill payments, temporary cash apps. Gone. I even changed passwords on accounts I'd set up for them years ago and deleted shared access. It took 3 hours. 3 hours to undo 11 years of being their safety net. When I finished, I sat back in my chair. My inbox was full of receipts confirming cancellations. My phone buzzed once. A message from Mom asking if I could cover the final florist payment tomorrow. I ignored it. Dylan came into the room while I was shutting my laptop. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said for the first time in a long time. "Yeah." The morning after the rehearsal dinner mess, Dylan and I were on a plane before sunrise. No long goodbyes, no explanations. I turned my phone off before we even reached the gate and kept it off for most of the trip. I'd check it every few days just to make sure nothing was actually on fire, but I wasn't responding to anyone. The flight was long, but it felt different from any other trip I'd taken. It wasn't a vacation to escape work or stress. It was the first time in my life I wasn't leaving a dozen responsibilities behind. For once, I hadn't left a single bill on autopay. I wasn't carrying anyone else's problems with me. It was just me, Dylan, and silence. Our first stop was Florence. We spent the first 2 days just walking. No schedule, no rush. We wandered narrow cobblestone streets, ate pasta from tiny cafes with 3 tables, sat on park benches, people watching for hours. Dylan would point out little details, street musicians, the smell of roasted coffee drifting from a shop, and I realized I'd been too stressed for too long to notice small things like that. By day 4, my smartwatch showed my resting heart rate had dropped. I hadn't needed medication to sleep since we got there. I wrote a note in the little travel journal Dylan gave me. Slept through the night for the first time in years. On day 5, we were in Santorini watching the water from a quiet rooftop patio. That's when I checked my phone for the first time since landing. It buzzed like it was possessed. Dozens of missed calls, voicemails, texts, emails, most from Mom. The first few messages were casual. "Hey, sweetheart. Just checking in. Hope you're having fun." Then they turned anxious. "We noticed the mortgage didn't go through. Could you look into that?" Then angry. "This isn't funny. We're getting calls from the bank." And finally, desperate. "Carolyn, you're destroying your sister's life. The wedding is in 3 weeks. Fix this now." I didn't respond. I scrolled a little more. There were emails too. Melissa forwarding a past due notice for the mortgage. The subject line just said, "Fix this." One from Sam. "Florist canceled. Balance was due last week. They won't hold our date. Are you trying to ruin everything?" I closed the email app and locked my phone. Dylan was flipping through a guidebook next to me. He looked up and said, "Don't even think about answering." "I wasn't going to," I said. We stuck to the plan. We hiked the next morning along a trail overlooking the sea. We stopped at a local bakery and shared breakfast on a stone wall. We took photos. We napped in the afternoon. I didn't look at my phone once, but by day 7, the notifications had tripled. New voicemails now came in angry waves. Melissa's tone shifted from, "We're worried," to "How dare you." Sam's messages grew colder, each one accusing me of being jealous or petty. Frank's were mostly guilt trips. I finally decided to send a single message. I opened our family group chat, the same one where I'd been dropping money for years, and typed, "I'm away for health reasons. I'm not paying for anything further. Please handle your own accounts." I put it away and didn't look again for days. That night, Dylan planned a quiet dinner on a terrace. Nothing fancy. Grilled fish, vegetables, fresh bread, the kind of meal we never seemed to have time for at home because I was always dealing with someone else's problem. Afterward, we walked back to the hotel and watched the lights from the village flicker below us. The following morning, I checked my phone again. It was chaos. Melissa had sent 18 messages in a row, ranging from begging to threatening to crying. Sam had written one long paragraph about how I was selfish and vindictive. Frank sent a single text, "You're going to regret this." I deleted every single one of them without opening. On day 10, Dylan booked us a cooking class. On day 12, we took a ferry to a small island and spent the whole day walking along empty beaches. I wrote another note in my journal. Didn't think about them once today. It became a small daily ritual. Check my pulse. Check the sea. Write one sentence in the journal. Every single number and word looked healthier than the last. On day 15, Melissa left a voicemail that started with sobbing and ended with her yelling that I was destroying the family. Sam's final message simply said, "Don't come to the wedding." I played that one twice. Then I deleted it. By the time we flew back home, something in me had shifted. It wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't guilt. It was something quieter. Like I'd finally exhaled after holding my breath for a decade. They were learning what life looked like without me patching every hole. And I was learning what life looked like without their problems hanging off my neck. For the first time in years, I felt okay. Not perfect, not happy, but okay. And that was enough. When Dylan and I landed back home, I already knew there'd be fallout waiting. What I didn't expect was how much of it would be addressed to me. The second I opened our mailbox, envelopes poured out like a bad joke, final notices, missed payment alerts, overdue bills, all with my name on them. Every account I'd opened for them over the last decade was now defaulting, and the companies hadn't gotten the memo that I'd stepped away. The mortgage company, utility providers, internet service, each demanded payment. I spent 2 hours that night calling every company, explaining that the property wasn't mine, the bills weren't mine, and I wouldn't be paying them anymore. Most were polite, some were confused. A few even sounded surprised when I said, "You'll have to contact the actual homeowners." By the end of the week, the fallout had started to hit my family hard. Frank's car was repossessed on a Tuesday morning. I know because he left 12 voicemails back to back. The first few were angry, calling me ungrateful and selfish. The last one was him saying, "I need that car to get to work." I didn't reply. He hadn't had a full-time job in years. Melissa took out a payday loan to bridge the gap after the mortgage bounced. That was her phrase, bridge the gap, as if she hadn't been depending on my money to keep the lights on for over a decade. 2 weeks later, she was complaining to relatives that the interest was criminal and I should pay it off because I caused it. Sam's wedding venue canceled their date completely. The remaining balance was unpaid for too long, and someone else booked it. She posted a dramatic status online about jealous relatives trying to ruin a special day. Her friends flooded the comments with sympathy. None of them knew she'd never paid for that venue in the first place. The entitlement wasn't just growing, it was mutating. Frank texted me asking if I'd be the bigger woman and pay off the car loan so he could get back on track. Melissa sent me a spreadsheet of their monthly expenses, highlighting the ones she expected me to resume handling. Sam emailed Dylan directly, not even me, demanding we cover the new venue deposit since we caused this mess. It was absurd. They weren't trying to fix anything. They were trying to get me to fix it for them, like always. Then things started to cross lines. One afternoon, Melissa showed up at our condo without warning. I was in a meeting on a video call when the building's front desk rang my cell, saying a woman was crying in the lobby, asking to be let up to see me. I ended the call and went downstairs, and there she was, red-eyed, holding a stack of overdue notices, yelling about how I was abandoning my family. Other residents were staring. I asked her to leave. She refused. I told the front desk to call building security to escort her out. They did. She screamed my name the entire way to the parking lot. That night, I emailed my HR department a full timeline of events, every payment, every canceled account, every message they'd sent. I attached screenshots, receipts, and call logs. I explained that if my family tried anything at work again, I wanted a record showing what was going on. Dylan was furious when he heard what happened. "This isn't just guilt-tripping anymore," he said. "It's harassment." He wasn't wrong. The next blow came from my attorney. I'd asked him to review some old paperwork, mostly to make sure nothing was still under my name. A week later, he called me and asked, "Did you authorize a home equity line of credit 5 years ago?" I hadn't. Turns out about $38,000 had been taken out against my parents' house, in my name. The signature wasn't mine, but it was close enough to pass. They'd been quietly adding the monthly payment, around $320, to the emergency requests I was covering. Since I was already sending them $2,000 plus a month for mortgage help and bills, I never questioned the total. It just blended into the chaos. I felt nothing when I heard it. No shock, no betrayal, just a kind of empty clarity. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a family mistake. It was straight-up identity theft. The next day, I filed a police report and a fraud claim with the bank. It wasn't about revenge. It was about protecting myself. I'd spent too many years sacrificing my own future for them. I wasn't about to let them destroy it entirely. 2 days later, Melissa posted a long message on Facebook. It was basically a public smear campaign. According to her, I had abandoned my duties as a daughter, stolen from the family, and turned my back when they needed me most. She ended it with a line that actually made me laugh. "We raised her better than this." I didn't respond. I screenshotted every word and saved it. People I barely knew started messaging me asking if I was okay. Some believed her, most didn't, but it didn't matter either way. They were spiraling, financially, emotionally, publicly, and instead of looking in the mirror, they were blaming me for every bad decision they'd ever made. The truth was simple. I hadn't done anything to them. I'd just stopped doing things for them. And for people who've built their entire lives around my help, that felt like betrayal. The situation was getting worse by the day, but I wasn't scared of it anymore. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one drowning. They were, and I wasn't jumping in to save them. By the time fall rolled around, things for them weren't just bad. They were unraveling. Every call they'd ignored, every bill they'd pushed aside, every decision they'd let me clean up before was now slamming into them all at once. And this time I wasn't standing in the way. The first hit came from the bank. The mortgage hadn't been paid in months, and the fraud investigation I'd started over the forged loan was moving fast. They froze the account and sent a notice of foreclosure. It wasn't a warning this time. It was a final demand. Pay up or lose the house. Melissa called me 34 times in one afternoon. I didn't answer a single one. She left voicemails switching between screaming and sobbing. "You're really going to let us lose our home? This is where you grew up." One of them ended with, "How could you do this to your family?" Frank's credit score tanked so hard that even his prepaid card got flagged. He tried applying for a personal loan and got denied instantly. Then he messaged me, "Hope you're happy. You destroyed my financial reputation." I read it twice and deleted it. The irony was too much. They'd spent years destroying mine. I was still fixing accounts they'd ruined long before. Old credit lines, forgotten co-signed cards, joint bills I'd been tricked into. It felt like cleaning up after a hurricane I never caused. Melissa's meltdown wasn't just in private anymore. She posted a 900-word rant on Facebook, accusing me of betraying the people who made me. She claimed I'd stolen from them by calling the bank and forcing them into debt. She wrote that a good daughter would have stepped up. Within a few hours, relatives I hadn't spoken to in a decade were calling me names in the comments. But then something interesting happened. People outside the family, neighbors, co-workers, even a few of Melissa's own friends, started calling her out. One comment from a neighbor stood out. "You mean the daughter who's been paying your bills for 10 plus years? Maybe it's time to learn how to pay your own." It got more likes than her original post. Then Derek pulled the plug on the wedding. Sam showed up on my doorstep 3 days later. Mascara streaked down her face and shaking with anger. She didn't knock. She just started yelling the second Dylan opened the door. "You ruined my life!" she screamed. "He says he can't marry into a family this unstable. He says I should have told you to stop before you destroyed everything." Dylan didn't say a word. He just stared at her, then slowly closed the door in her face. No yelling, no arguing, just silence. I heard Sam's footsteps stomping away a second later. A week later, Melissa tried her old tactic, guilt. She called from a new number after I'd blocked the old one. I let it go to voicemail, but I listened to it once. "We're still your family," she said, her voice shaking. "We made mistakes, but we're blood. That should mean something." It used to. It really did, but it didn't anymore. I called her back and said, "Family doesn't forge signatures. Criminals do." Then I hung up. That line must have cut deep, because the next move was uglier. Melissa started showing up at Dylan's work. The first time she was waiting by his car. The second time she tried to talk her way into the building by pretending to be a client. The third time she followed him to the parking garage, yelling at him to talk some sense into his wife. That was it. Dylan called me from the stairwell, shaken and angry. I left work early and met him there. And the next day, I filed for a restraining order. It was granted within a few weeks. Melissa wasn't allowed within 200 feet of either of us or our offices again. I sent the paperwork to her in the mail with a short note. Actions, consequences. From there, everything snowballed. The house was officially seized by the bank and listed for auction. Frank and Melissa had to move into a small 2-bedroom rental on the other side of town. They sold off furniture, canceled their cable, and posted sad photos online about downsizing. I ignored them all. Sam had to drop out of law school entirely. Without my financial support, she couldn't afford tuition and living expenses at the same time. She moved into a tiny apartment with a roommate and started working 2 jobs, one at a legal clinic and another part-time at a local cafe. She emailed me once, saying I'd taken everything from her. I didn't reply. The truth was, I hadn't taken a single thing. I'd just stopped giving. There's a difference. And the funniest part? They still couldn't admit they'd done this to themselves. Melissa told anyone who would listen that I was punishing them. Frank told a cousin that I was holding a grudge. Sam told her friends that I'd lost my mind. They all told the story like I was some villain who flipped a switch one day. None of them mentioned the 11 years I carried them. None of them mentioned the forged loan. None of them mentioned the endless times they laughed while I paid for their comfort. The collapse wasn't dramatic. It wasn't fast. It was slow and loud, like watching a building crumble floor by floor. Every lie, every excuse, every act of entitlement came crashing down on them. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to catch them. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel angry. I felt nothing. And that was the best feeling of all. About 7 months passed before I realized how much quieter my life had become. No sudden calls, no frantic texts, no, "Can you help us?" messages at 2 a.m. The silence that used to feel strange now felt like peace. Melissa and Frank were still around, but not in the way they used to be. Word got back to me through a few relatives, people who had stayed neutral during the fallout. They'd moved into a small two-bedroom rental on the edge of town, far from the big house they once bragged about. It had peeling paint, an ancient water heater, and neighbors who played music too loud. Melissa hated it. She told anyone who would listen that they were forced out by their ungrateful daughter. From what I heard, Frank wasn't working anymore. He'd tried picking up odd jobs, but nothing stuck. Melissa had taken a part-time position at a grocery store, and according to a coworker who messaged me, she spent most of her shifts complaining to shoppers about how selfish I was. I didn't care. Let her talk. It wasn't my problem anymore. Sam wasn't doing much better. With the wedding off and Derek gone, she'd moved into a small apartment with a roommate she barely knew. She worked long hours at a legal clinic and picked up weekend shifts at a cafe just to stay afloat. From the outside, she looked like any other 20-something trying to get by. But I knew how much of a shock it was for her. She'd never had to think about bills, rent, or budgeting before. For the first time in her life, she was learning what responsibility felt like. And me? I was building a life that was finally mine. The first thing I did was pay off every personal debt I had: credit cards, lingering medical bills, a leftover student loan I'd been chipping away at. All gone. I closed accounts I'd opened years ago for family emergencies and shut down every joint financial tie that had ever connected me to them. It felt like cutting off invisible chains, one by one. A month later, I got promoted. My company had been hinting at it for a while, but now I actually had the mental space to focus on my work without constant family drama pulling my attention away. I was sharper, more creative, more valuable. I became the go-to person for major cybersecurity incidents. And with that came a significant raise and a team of my own. With the extra income and freed up money, Dylan and I finally bought our own place, a small condo with a balcony overlooking a quiet street. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. No one else had a key. No one else had a claim on it. I set up a real savings account, a retirement plan, and even a future travel fund for vacations we actually wanted to take, not stress relief getaways we needed to survive. Our weekends changed too. Instead of racing to fix someone else's problem, I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. Dylan and I hosted board game nights with friends, something we'd never had time for before. We took long evening walks and tried new restaurants without worrying about whether we could afford to help someone else first. Life was simple, not boring, just steady. One evening, while organizing old paperwork, I stumbled across a folder with all the financial records I'd kept for my family. Every payment, every bill, every transfer. I stared at it for a long time before shredding the entire thing. I didn't need to carry that history anymore. It was done. A few months later, I made a quiet decision. I donated $15,000 to a nonprofit that provides legal and financial support to people dealing with family-related financial abuse. I didn't attach my name. I didn't even tell Dylan until months later. The confirmation email sat in my archive as a small reminder of how far I'd come. My health was the next thing that changed. At my next doctor's appointment, my blood pressure was almost perfect. The headaches were gone. I was sleeping through the night without waking up panicked about late payments or emergency calls. The doctor smiled and said, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." I didn't tell him the reason, that I'd spent more than a decade living under other people's weight and that for the first time I wasn't, but I knew. The best part wasn't the promotion or the new condo or the quiet weekends. It was the small, ordinary moments that told me I was finally living my own life. Like the mornings Dylan and I had breakfast on the balcony before work, or the afternoons we'd walk through a park without my phone buzzing, or the nights I'd check my accounts and see that every dollar was mine, not tied up in someone else's disaster. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving. I was living. And once you get a taste of that, there's no going back. They were out there still spinning their story, still blaming me for their downfall. But it didn't matter, because every day that passed, their opinions mattered less. And my life got better. Deep down, I think they were starting to realize something too. That I wasn't coming back to save them. Not now. Not ever. 2 years passed before I saw any of them again. 2 quiet, steady, unbelievably normal years. It was enough time for my life to completely reshape itself. New condo, new promotion, stronger marriage, stable finances, peace. I hadn't spoken to Melissa, Frank, or Sam in all that time. Aside from the occasional bit of gossip that drifted my way through distant relatives, they were basically ghosts. And I liked it that way. Then one random Thursday afternoon, someone rang the doorbell. Dylan was in the kitchen, finishing up a work call, so I went to answer it. The second I opened the door, I knew who it was. Sam stood there, and she didn't look anything like the version of herself I remembered. Her hair was unwashed and pulled into a messy knot. There were dark circles under her eyes. Her clothes were wrinkled and looked like she'd slept in them. The confident, polished sister who used to strut around telling everyone she was destined for big things was gone. "Can I come in?" she asked, voice small. I hesitated, then stepped aside. "Sure." She walked in slowly, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to. Dylan peeked out from the kitchen, but didn't say anything. Sam sat on the edge of the couch, clutching a folder like it was a life jacket. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, "I don't know where else to go." I sat down across from her. "What's going on?" "Everything's falling apart," she said, her voice cracked. "I'm behind on rent. My student loans are a mess. I had to sell my car to pay for Mom's medical bills. Dad hasn't worked in almost a year. Mom's sick, Carolyn. She's not doing well. We're drowning." There it was, the plea. The same one I'd heard 100 times before, except this time it sounded less entitled and more desperate. "I didn't realize how much you did," she said, voice quieter now. "I really didn't. I thought you were just helping. I didn't understand how much you were carrying until I had to do it myself." I nodded slowly. "I told you what I needed. None of you listened." "I know," she said quickly. "I was awful. I laughed at you when I should have defended you. I joined in on the jokes. I didn't say thank you once. I know all of that. I'm sorry." It didn't sound fake. It didn't sound like manipulation. But I'd spent too many years hearing sorry followed by another request. "I appreciate the apology," I said. "I do. But I'm not paying for anything." Her eyes widened a little. "Carolyn, I'm not asking for much. Just enough to get back on my feet. A few thousand, please. I'm not trying to take advantage anymore." I shook my head. "I told you 2 years ago. I'm done being the safety net. That hasn't changed." She tried again. "Mom's sick. Dad doesn't know what to do. They're terrified. Please." "I'm sorry she's sick," I said gently. "I really am. But you have options. There are state programs, financial counseling, legal aid." I grabbed a sticky note and wrote down a number for a nonprofit that helps people restructure debt and access resources. I slid it across the coffee table. "That's the best I can do." Her face fell. "That's it?" "That's it." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't yell. She didn't argue. She just stared at the sticky note like it was a foreign language. "I thought maybe you'd changed your mind," she whispered. "I did," I said. "I changed my mind about sacrificing my life for people who never cared what it cost me." She wiped her eyes and stood up slowly. "I don't blame you," she said. "You were right to walk away." I walked her to the door. Before she stepped out, she turned back to me. "I hope one day we can fix this." "Maybe," I said, "but not with money." And then she was gone. No dramatic goodbye. No last-minute guilt trip. Just quiet footsteps down the hallway and the sound of the elevator doors closing. I stood there for a minute after she left, looking at the empty space where she'd been. Dylan came over and rested his head on my shoulder. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, "better than I've ever been." We made tea and sat out on the balcony as the sun started to set. The city buzzed below us, cars honking, people laughing, life going on. I stared at the sky and thought about everything that had happened over the last 2 years. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel anything close to guilt. What I felt was something simpler. Freedom. They'd called me selfish for walking away. They'd called me cruel for cutting them off. They'd said I'd destroyed the family. But none of that was true. I hadn't destroyed anything. I hadn't ruined their lives. I'd just stopped pretending that mine didn't matter. And for the first time in my life, that was enough.